Furthermore, the bank on 11 September 2017 issued the Minimum Capital Directive, by which all banks were required to increase their minimum paid-up capital to 400 million by 31st December 2018. Banks were required to comply with the new minimum paid-up capital through fresh capital injection, capitalization of income surplus, or a combination of the two. The Minimum Capital Directive was part of regulatory measures that were aimed at strengthening the banking sector to make it more resilient to shocks, as well as to help position the banks to better support the growing needs of the Ghanaian economy. It was also the expectation of the Bank of Ghana that the recapitalization exercise would help promote consolidation in the banking industry through sustainable mergers and acquisitions, along with stronger corporate governance structures and risk management systems and practices. Following the recapitalization exercise that has just ended at the end of December 2018, we now have 23 universal banks operating in Ghana. These banks have all met the new minimum paid-up capital of 400 million Ghana cedis. In particular, 16 banks have met the new minimum paid-up capital requirement of 400 million through the capitalization of income surplus and fresh capital injection. The Bank of Ghana has approved 3 applications for mergers. Consequently, the First Atlantic Merchant Bank Limited and Energy Commercial Bank have merged. Omni Bank and Bank Sahel Sahara have merged. And First National Bank and GHL Bank have merged. The 3 resulting banks out of these measures have all met the new minimum capital requirement. Some private pension funds in Ghana have injected fresh equity capital in 5 indigenous banks through a special purpose holding company named Ghana Amalgamated Trust Limited. In addition to the state-owned banks, that is ADB, NIB, benefiting from the GATT scheme, the other beneficiary banks, the merged OMI and Sahel Sahara, Universal Merchant Bank, and Prudential Bank, were selected by GATT on the basis of their solvency and good corporate governance. You can get more details of the GATT scheme from the GATT itself and the Ministry of Finance. To ensure that the capital provided by banks indeed represents quality capital in the amounts required to meet the minimum capital directive, the Bank of Ghana adopted and implemented a rigorous capital verification process. In the process, the Bank of Ghana has undertaken comprehensive due diligence on new investors in banks and has verified the sources of funds for the recapitalization. Some of this verification process is still ongoing and will be validated by the external auditors of banks as part of the 2018 external audit. Resources from GATT will be used to recapitalize the 2 state-owned banks, that is ADB and NIB, to help drive and promote long-term sustainable financing for agricultural and industrial expansion. The government has notified the Bank of Ghana that it intends to restructure NIB through governance and management reforms, as well as streamlining its business model to help refocus it as a bank on industrialization. To help ensure that these reforms succeed, the Bank of Ghana today has appointed an advisor for NIB, pursuant to Section 101 of the Banks and Specialized Deposit-Taking Institutions Act of 2016, that is Act 930. The advisor would advise the management of the bank with a view to helping improve the affairs of the bank. This advisor would hold office until otherwise advised by the Bank of Ghana and will furnish the bank with a status report on NIB within 3 months and as frequently as the Bank of Ghana may require. Ladies and gentlemen, GN Bank was unable to comply with the minimum capital directive by 31st December 2018. Consequently, the bank has applied for and Bank of Ghana has approved the grant of a savings and loans company license. The bank has also approved a transition plan submitted by GN for winding down aspects of its business which are not compatible with the savings and loans company license. The Bank of Ghana will closely monitor implementation of the approved transitional plan, which is expected to be completed by the end of June 2019. In this regard, the bank has also appointed an advisor for GN Bank pursuant to Section 101 of the Banks and Specialized Deposit-Taking Institutions Act of 2016 to advise the management of GN with a view to ensuring a smooth transition to a viable savings and loans company. The advisor will hold office until otherwise advised by the Bank of Ghana and will furnish the Bank of Ghana with a status report on GN Bank within 3 months and as frequently as the Bank of Ghana may require. The Bank of Baroda Limited was licensed by the Bank of Ghana as a universal bank on 28 January 2008. It is a wholly owned subsidiary of Bank of Baroda, India, which is in turn wholly owned by the Government of India. By a letter dated 9th April 2018, the Bank of Ghana was notified by the Bank of Baroda, India, the parent company of Bank of Baroda Ghana Limited, of its decision to divest, sell its entire 100% equity in the bank due to the Government of India's decision to rationalize the overseas operations of the branches and subsidiaries of Indian public sector banks. The Bank of Ghana has since approved a request for a voluntary winding up of the operations of Bank of Baroda Ghana Limited effective 31st December 2018. To ensure an orderly exit and to safeguard the interests of depositors and customers, the Bank of Ghana has approved an assumption agreement between the Bank of Baroda Ghana Limited and Stanbic Bank Ghana Limited, under which the latter would assume all deposits and selected loan assets of the bank. The Bank of Ghana will closely monitor the transition and is confident that Stanbic Bank Ghana Limited will ensure that depositors of Bank of Baroda Limited continue to have access to their deposits. Pursuant to Section 123 of the Banks and Specialized Deposit-Taking Institutions Act 2016, that is Act 930, the Bank of Ghana has revoked the banking licenses of Premium Bank Limited and Heritage Bank Limited with effect from the date of this notice and has appointed Mr. Vish Ashiabo of PricewaterhouseCoopers as receiver for the two banks. Complete details of the basis on which the licenses of the two banks have been revoked will be attached to this press release. Among other things, Premium Bank was found to be insolvent as of 30th November 2018 with a capital adequacy ratio of negative 125.62%. Heritage Bank, among other things, obtained its banking license on 4th October 2016 on the basis of capital with questionable sources. Furthermore, the bank was unable to meet the new minimum capital requirement of 400 as of 31st December 2018. The Bank of Ghana has approved a purchase and assumption agreement between the receiver and Consolidated Bank Ghana Limited, under which the receiver has transferred some assets and liabilities of the two banks to CBG. All deposits, current, savings, fixed deposit accounts of the two banks have been transferred to Consolidated Bank with effect from the date of this notice. The government of Ghana has issued a bond in the face of 1.4 billion cedis to the Consolidated Bank to cover the gap between the value of good assets and liabilities of the two banks transferred to CBG. Let me assure depositors of the two banks that their deposits are safe and customers would have full access to their funds. To conclude, ladies and gentlemen, it has been an eventful last 20 months during which the Bank of Ghana has had to take the necessary bold steps to clean up the banking sector and to reposition it to support the economic growth and transformation agenda for Ghana. The just ended recapitalization exercise has repositioned the banking sector as better capitalized, liquid, stronger, and more resilient. The ongoing strengthening of the regulatory and supervisory framework will also ensure that the sector is well governed, well managed, and better supervised to restore and maintain much needed confidence in the sector. In particular, the Bank of Ghana expects that shareholders of banks will exercise control over these institutions, not for the benefit of shareholders and related and connected parties, but primarily in the interest of depositors, creditors, employees, and other stakeholders. Secondly, bank boards will be composed of persons that are capable of exercising strong and independent oversight. They are expected to ensure that the interests of all relevant stakeholders are protected, that risk management will be integrated in the strategic focus of governance and management of these institutions, and that the banks would ensure compliance with the regulatory requirements and ethical standards are embedded in overall risk management. We would also commit to enhance our supervisory systems, processes, and our teams to be better able to identify early warning signals, enforce the regulatory requirements, and ensure that prompt corrective action is taken by banks to recover quickly from any signs of distress. The Bank of Ghana remains committed to promoting a safe, sound, stable, and resilient financial sector and count on the cooperation of all stakeholders. I thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. It's question time. Very brief, please. We'll take just one round. No questions. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Adnan Adams. I work for Economic Times Newspaper. In your briefing, they said that 23 banks have recapitalized, but in the breakdown, the 16 actually met due to their portfolio, their balance sheet. Then 3 through measures, and then 5 through the grant. Adding this breakdown, we are getting 24.
Yeah.
So one.
I think you're counting Omni twice. So you're counting Omni twice. That's why you're having 24. Because Omni is in the banks that has merged, and then it's in the GAT, the assisted bank also. So you should count that only once. Yeah.
So Omni is benefiting like 2%.
Yes.
evening, Mr. Governor. My name is Richard E. Anegwiabi. I write for the Business and Financial Times. So following the collapse of Premium and Heritage Bank, we've seen some sort of a trend where banks that were established barely for 3 years have gone through these challenges. We can talk about Sovereign, the Construction Bank, Page Bank, and now we've had 2 banks which are relatively new banks. So it seems there's a problem, there's a challenge with how they were established. And when we are talking about how they were established, of course we have to look at who gave them the licenses, because now we are having to spend monies to take over some of their liabilities. What are we going to do about some of these institutional problems? I mean, we can look at what we are going to do in the future, but what happens to what has happened in the past, those who took charge?
Okay.
I remember previously when you announced the deadline and the requirements, you spoke about the fact that December 31, and it was clear in every bank's mind of what will happen to you if you don't meet the capital requirement. Now, getting up to that date, we had all sort of arrangement being put in place and all the rest. As a regulator of the banking space, were you worried about what came up last minute, whether it's coming from government or it's coming from these banks, because they all knew what was the plan? And I also wanted to find out from you that what was the communication between the department and these banks that, for instance, a month to the deadline, we knew that these are the banks that are having problems, so that just after December 31, the books are closed and we are going forward. Are you worried about how all these things are handling the fact that people thought that then government more spies in the face of the government or the rest with respect to your actions and all those things? And second one, with respect to what happened to the other banks when there was an assumption, have we done all the necessary extrapolations, if I can use that one here, to ensure that we minimize the shocks that will come with a similar action with respect to these 2 banks?
My name is Jose from Star FM. I want to know if the central bank played any role in the formation of GAS. Did the central bank provide any information as to the banks that can be helped or whatsoever? Sorry. My name is Suleiman.
You know, I'd really wanted to do one round, but it doesn't look like it will be possible.
No, I give my question. My name is Suleiman Mustafa from the Daily Graphic. Governor, I mean, with 23 banks, have we reached the optimum, or there are still more rooms for further banks? And again, with GN Bank, in the transition, how would we call it? Is it GM Savings and Loans or GN Bank? And maybe my last question is, I mean, looking at how these banks have gone down, barely 4 years after their formation, have you revised your licensing regime for some of these banks, or new entrants into the banking sector? Thank you. Okay, I'm Edward from Ghana Television. Sir, you Premium and Heritage. I want to find out what accounted for their stay all this while, because if you I listened to you, you said you were not able to raise the minimum capital as suspected. But why did you allow them to stay on to this while? And secondly, I didn't hear anything about potential bank. You mentioned, okay, sorry, I got okay. And then my next question is about knowing about bailout or this kind of arrangement in our history. What mechanism have been put in place to ensure that even when they go into undergrad, you're going to make sure that we don't go through some of the systems we're going through over the years when BOG with RAISY, I mean, set up a system like that to protect these banks so that we don't lose out. Thank you.
Maybe let me deal with those that have come and will be happy to take a second round, contrary to the original plan. But I think that the point where our colleague from GTV left off is probably the best place to start. Why has it taken us long to get to this position? And I think that is why, for me, the news this afternoon is not about Premium Bank. Premium Bank is an old problem, and the issues concerning the licensing of banks and the problems that has been associated with that has been overflowed. We've discussed this for nearly a year now. We've been discussing these issues. And if we had been very fair, we would have shut Premium down in August because the signs were very clear. But something came about a merger as early as August for Premium Bank, and we thought we should give them the opportunity to see whether the merger could help them. Unfortunately, I'm sure you've been following the discussion, the merger fell through, and that is why Premium has been lingering for the past 3-4 months. It's an old problem. We have overflowed the issue of the mistakes that were committed in the licensing of these banks. Is a problem that we have inherited. Unfortunately, we have carried Premium over to the end of this year, and we are still discussing these issues. But I think, for me, that is not the news for this end-of-year assessment. Maybe the news is about Heritage Bank, because Heritage Bank is not insolvent, but we have had issues about the capital that was used to set up the bank. And I don't want to go into the details of that matter, because you know that some of it is in court. And that's why we have to manage the communication on this subject. I can tell you for a fact that the majority shareholder of that bank is not fit and proper by our banking definitions, and therefore he cannot own or run a bank in this country. And this is where I'll end that discussion. That is the news. But we also cannot go into the details of that particular case. Now, whether 23 banks are the optimum or not, as I told you, this is a dynamic system. We have a framework with a liberal entry into the market, and then if you don't play according to the rules, we'll take you out. So it's very dynamic. Today is 23, we don't know what it would be tomorrow. Whether the central bank played any role in GATT, no. As you're told, GATT is an arrangement that has been put together by private pension funds. And I think that they have their own criteria on banks that they would be interested in investing in. If you have followed the discussions that took place throughout the year, you remember the indigenous banks went and tried to petition this new capital requirement and all of that. So this is not new. I mean, the discussion has gone on for a while whether some kind of intervention could be put into place to help the indigenous banks. And I think finally the private pension funds have come around to say that, okay, this is something that we can do, but we are going to do it on our terms. We are going to determine which banks are qualified to join, and after we have joined, and if we have majority shares, there will be consequences for that in terms of board composition and all of that. So it's a private sector initiative. We are supporting it because they are supporting the indigenous Ghanaian ownership in our financial sector, and that is something that, as a central bank, we want to support. So no, we have not played a direct role in it, but we support the initiative. Now, whether we've learned lessons from the assumptions that we have done in the past, yes, we've learned a lot of lessons from the previous assumptions. Fortunately for us, these two banks are relatively smaller banks, I think 5 branches in the case of one of them, and 6 or 8 branches in the case of the other. So they are much, much smaller operations compared to the earlier banks that we had dealt with. So we are not worried about GATT. I see George Uafi asked that question on whether we are worried about GATT. We support it. I think it's a good cause to ensure that, you know, there's indigenous ownership in the financial sector. Fortunately for us, they are also asking for efficiency in terms of governance and all the issues that we would be looking at. The GATT is also looking at that as a criteria in order to put money in the banks. So that's where I think we will end it. I'm not sure if there is anything outstanding from the first set of questions. Oh, GN Bank is a savings and loans. We have revoked the license today, so it's not a universal bank anymore. But in the transition, obviously there are some foreign exchange operations, for example, that they cannot, and they have been given a 6-month period to transition from those operations that are not consistent with the SNL. BNFT, I didn't answer any.
No.
What was the question again?
About the internal processes regarding the license.
I answered it, that this is an issue we have flogged over and over because it's not a new issue that is coming up. Premium Bank is an old discussion, just that the action on Premium Bank has been delayed because of that failed merger that, you know, initially happened around August. So let's not go back into who did what and you know what licensing things were not followed. We understand that story.
All right. Now, Edward, you asked the question. Echo.
Thank you, Governor. Looks like your term is laden with a lot of interesting news. I don't envy you. Tell me, how much is it to the state with regards to the cost of, if you want to call it anyone, you can call it a bailout or whatever, that we are using to try and resuscitate or to save these banks? There is a report about 8 or 9 billion loan for CBG. Then there's an estimated 2 billion where GATT comes in, and you also talk about a 1.4 billion for CBG on account of these 2 banks. In total, the process seemingly coming to an end, how much have we invested to the state or cost the state in our attempt to rescue the situation? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Governor, and Happy New Year to you and your officers. I don't know whether this question was what you attempted to respond to earlier. My issue is that there is a concern that the Consolidated Bank of Ghana, is that how we call it? Ghana Consolidated Bank. Okay. It confuses me with the Ghana Commercial Bank. So there's a lot of toxic assets that have been dumped there, which is creating problems for, you know, depositors, you know, their ability to withdraw. Now, we seem to be adding 2 more banks, which may also have some toxic assets. Now, what have you done the balancing to ensure that, okay, we are not going to create a heavier, you know, burden for this new entity that we are trying to use to salvage depositors' monies? Secondly, also, in relation to that is the creation of the GATT. These banks that we are agreeing with, the pensions fund, managers to partner with, how have we assessed their, assets and liabilities to ensure that pensions funds will not be run aground in the effort to hold these banks, above the waters? Now, my third question, something you did not want to talk about, but unfortunately you brought it out, is about the Heritage Bank. You said part of the issue is in court and you would not like to comment on it. Now, having taken a decision like this based on an issue in court, which you would not like to comment on, would you not be preempting the judgment, the outcome of the case? Thank you very much.
Yeah, good afternoon. My name is Maurice with GTV. Given that you've appointed an advisor for NIB, are you able to tell us the current state of that particular bank, their stated capital, maybe assets today?
Good evening, Governor. My name is Maxwell Adumbila. I write for Graphic Business. And a follow-up to Justice's question on...
Oh, I recognize that name, Maxwell. Okay.
I'm grateful. Okay. So, as a follow-up to CBG, Consolidated Bank Ghana Limited. As a follow-up to that, actually what I notice is the problem is not about how much has been issued by way of a bond to them. The liquidity or the availability of the funds as and when they need them. So we had a situation where even though the bond is issued, like we heard them explain, it's a paper. So they cannot pay customers with it. It has not been demonetized. And we saw the challenges that brought in between the period CBG was formed up till now. Now we have two banks going under them again, and 1.4 billion bond has been issued. Have we learned our lessons with regards to what happened between August and now, the implications on the entire financial sector as far as liquidity and the rest is concerned? And are we demonetizing this bond, or it is as was the case with the GCB bond as well as the earlier bond given to CBG? And then two, I found your response on Premium Bank a bit instructive. Instructive in the sense that you said if you should have taken action, you should have done that in August, but they said they were merging. As a result, you decided to give them some time. Some of us had a feeling that some of the banks were being smart by announcing initiatives that will keep the central bank away from taking a decision on them. And you kind of confirmed that even though they themselves probably knew that they had a challenge that required a certain heavy-handedness from the regulator, they decided to take an action, knowing very well that that action will prevent the central bank from taking the decision. So in a way, they, together with you, use a strategy that sustained them in the system for some time. Are we clear that those also announcing measures are not following the same trend, or those even announcing certain supports under the GATT, especially now that we've exhausted the 31st, are they not coming under the same strategy? And then maybe finally, on the Heritage Bank thing, haven't we put are we not rushing by taking a decision based on an issue that hasn't been concluded? Yeah, thank you.
Mark, thank you. Last question.
My name is Senna. I report for Change One TV. Can you kindly give us more insight as to what steps are being taken to restructure NIB and ADB? Thank you.
Well, yes, so thank you very much. I didn't want to take the second round, and maybe I should have insisted on not taking the second round. But I think those are all very good questions. But let us focus on the positive side of the developments rather than the past and the negative. The key thing is that we are finished with the cleanup. At the end of it, we have 23 banks that are well capitalized. It's a big achievement. Within 2 years, we have finished cleaning up the banking sector. That is the news. And that is what I expect that you will carry away from this press conference. And not the questions and, all of those issues that you are trying to raise. I'm not belittling the points that you are raising. I mean, we all recognize the importance of ensuring that those banks that are merging have merged and all the necessary agreements have been signed. We all recognize the importance of verifying the capital and making sure that those who say they have the 400 million do really have the 400 million. So the verification exercise has been very robust. So those questions are very important. But I think we've all learned our lessons from what has happened in the past, and we have taken a special effort to make sure that it is not repeated. The issue about consolidated bank, I think it's a little bit of misinformation that was put out there. The Bank of Ghana has monetized. The word is not demonetized. The Bank of Ghana actually has monetized that bond. What that means is that we have literally bought the bond of Consolidated Bank. We've given them cash, right? So the initial liquidity problem that they had is not there. Consolidated Bank has a lot of resources. They got 3 billion CDs from Bank of Ghana, and they have that liquidity to do business with. It is not correct to say that they had toxic assets. All of those negative, I think I will call that misinformation. And then the issue of the creation of GATT, and I think the question was whether GATT had the money or not. I mean, obviously, given the experience that we have had, we would definitely make sure that that does not happen. In fact, it's important also to point out that GATT is a private pension fund arrangement. It's not directly a government arrangement. It's important that that distinction is also made. So the issue of CBG, I think you should have confidence in Consolidated Bank. We do not think that the additional assumption of 2 small banks such as Heritage and Premium would change the developments there significantly. They have a bond of 1.4 billion. If they need the Bank of Ghana to buy it off them, we would buy it off them. So we've given that literally central bank guarantee to that bond. That is liquidity. If Consolidated Bank needs an additional billion CDs, Bank of Ghana will provide it to ensure that depositors get access to their funds. So with that kind of assurance from the central bank, why should you doubt that Consolidated Bank will not have liquidity? So yes, the question about debt. Yes, I mean, this has been an expensive cleanup process for all of us as Ghanaians. We have a total of about 10 billion. I'm not adding the GATT because GATT is not exactly a government issue. So if you just add the 1.4 billion to the earlier amount for GCB and Consolidated Bank, you're probably around 12 billion or so. It's not cheap. It's been a very expensive cleanup of the financial sector. This is why we have receivers that are involved in this process. The receivers are supposed to try to recover the funds. The receivers should recover the funds. And that's where I think we need to put a lot more effort in the recovery process. So I believe I've dealt with most of the questions. The issue of Heritage Bank, I wanted to get into the law with you. I don't know if I should, but we don't need the court's decision to take the decisions that we have taken. We have to be sure of the sources of capital to license a bank. If we have any doubt, if we feel that it's suspicious, just on the basis of that, we find that that is not acceptable as capital. We don't need the court to decide for us whether anybody is fit and proper. Just being involved in a case that involves a criminal procedure makes you not fit and proper. So we don't need the court to reach a decision for these particular actions. So thank you very much on that note, and we are here. AC is there. If you need any clarification, we will be there to support you. I think that for me, the takeaway from this evening is that we have finished. We have finished the cleaning up of the banking sector. Within 2 years, we have seen a banking sector that has been more consolidated. We had 34 banks. Today we are 23. That's a lot of consolidation in the 2-year period. These are banks that are better capitalized, they are more liquid, and therefore more robust. And we think that it is positive for the Ghanaian economy as a whole. So thank you all very much for coming. And Happy New Year.
Yeah.